Meeting to order. As usual, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So any of you here that are able to stand, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we're honored to be able to have a couple of presentations to start off our meeting. First will be for the Alpharetta First Responders Recognition presented by the Lions Club. The representatives from the Lions Club will meet me down here, and Councilman Hypes as liaison to public safety.
We're fellow Methodists.
Thank you all for being here. Mr. Chapman, I appreciate you, your Lions membership, for joining us in this presentation this evening. I'll go ahead and turn the microphone over to you, to Bob Jamison.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Chief. We're celebrating an anniversary this year. 20 years we've been recognizing the first responders for our great city. And it started immediately thereafter, what you and I know as 9/11. And we're going to recognize the Police Officer of the Year. Now his name is Matthew Mike, and he's been with the department for three years. Prior to that, he was with Cobb County, but he just recognized his lifelong dream. He's become a canine officer. What's the dog's name? Aries. And it's Belgian Malamute? Yes, sir. There was a great article, and I'm sure most of you saw it at AJC this week, about a retired canine officer from our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And congratulations to Mike Esposito. Matthew Bozer is the Fireman of the Year. He's been with the department for 16 years, and just 3 weeks ago became a lieutenant. He's got a family, lives here in Alpharetta, and he is EMS. He's on the EMS team, is that correct? Okay. And we thank you so much for your service. Thank you. Robin Barton is the Communications Officer of the Year, and she's been with the city of Alpharetta for 7 years, and she's a native of Alaska. But we're so delighted that she's in Alpharetta. Robin, thank you so much for your service. Thank you all very much.
Come over here, because I may need you one of these days. Yes, sir.
Bring the dog.
Look, remember this face? Okay. Okay, thank you. No.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor, thank you. Thank you.
The next presentation will be for Tech Alpharetta. Would you like to come forward to this presentation? Mr. Thomas? You're quite welcome. Councilman Burnett, would you like to join us?
Sure.
Councilman Burnett is our liaison to economic development. Those in the Development Authority, if you'd like to come forward, please feel free to do so. It takes a team.
There's a couple things I want to share, if that's okay. One of the strategic goals of Tech Alpharetta and their partnership with the city and the Development Authority is to strengthen the technology industry ecosystem and local enterprise climate so that technology companies in the city can thrive. As part of that goal, Tech Alpharetta's incubator was created to support the growth and development of small tech companies and startups needing access to resources for growth, scaling, and innovation in the city. Today, we're pleased to recognize two of the most recent graduates from their incubator. The first we want to recognize is Soul Microgrid. Where's the team from Soul Microgrid? They are the 15th company to graduate from the startup incubator. Soul Microgrid provides businesses with energy-powered microgrids enabled by their platform and helps businesses maintain continuous power during natural disasters and power outages. Matthew Ward is here, and is Joyce here? Again, thank you to Karen Cashin and Dale at Tech Alpharetta. We've got the Development Authority board members here as well. There's Jill Bernard, there's Jack Nugent, Chair, David Chatham, Mark Wingate. And then while we're up here, I want to go ahead and acknowledge the 16th company to graduate from Tech Alpharetta, which is Fuss Mobile. Fuss Mobile is a medical device startup advancing non-invasive solutions for interventional pain management treatment. Their aim is to improve the patient's experience and clinical outcomes while reducing costs for payers and insurance providers. Is Dr. Hananil here? And Ron? Is Ron here?
We have Eric.
Eric, thank you for joining us. So, in addition to your graduation, we want to tell you thank you and we commend you for growing your business in Alpharetta. And I think it's also great enough that both companies have chosen to headquarter in Alpharetta as well. So we commend you, we recognize you, and we want to support you as you continue to innovate in our city. Thank you. Microgrid? Sure. Absolutely. Do you all want an opportunity to tell about your company?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. My name is Matthew Ward with Soul Microgrid. And what we do is that we build energy microgrid systems for retail chain stores. We're now currently in 7 different states in the country. And we're rolling out in California first. And we'll probably make ourselves coming back this way to the east after we get a successful launch. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi everybody. Fast Mobile is developing a non-invasive surgery. Basically, we're treating back pain. I'm assuming everybody here sooner or later would have one or had one in the past. So welcome to keep in touch. We're planning to start our FDA study probably by July this year.
We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your efforts, and we hope to be a partner with you as you continue to grow your businesses. And we're always here for you, as well as Tech Alpharetta and the team over there. Just because you graduated doesn't mean you're going away. You still have the family, okay? And we appreciate it. Would you like to share anything?
Oh, here's down there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I just wanted to first thank the City Council and the Mayor and the Development Authority for their support of Tech Alpharetta, making it possible for us to help support the startups who want to innovate and grow here in the City of Alpharetta. And then I just want to congratulate Soul Microgrid and Boost Mobile again on your accomplishments to date, and we're so excited to watch you continue to grow here in the city of Alpharetta.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're all going to take a picture together.
Yeah, I'm going to need a couple of those.
Unless you want a panoramic photo.
Am I the only short one?
Problem is, we've just got a lot of short.
Yeah, all people in the front. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
We're very proud of them, absolutely. It's as much recognition for them as it is for what you've been able to do.
Thank you, Mayor.
It is always a pleasure to be able to celebrate successes in these chambers, especially to kick off a meeting. So appreciate y'all patience, and we'll move on to the next items on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of 2 items: the council meeting minutes from our meeting of April 5th, 2021, and also the alcoholic beverage license application, PH-21-AB-12, NAGA Associates LLC, DBA Hilton Garden Inn, Atlanta North, Alpharetta, Windward Plaza. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from tonight's consent agenda? Seeing no one, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell to approve the consent agenda and a second by Councilman Burnett. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the public hearing items. I will note for the record that public hearing item MP-21-01/CLUP-2-02/V-21-02/V-21-04, the Bailey North Winds, will not be heard this evening. That item was deferred by the applicant and will neither be heard nor discussed at this time. So there will be no public hearing item for this evening. I'll also note for the records, while I'm doing some housekeeping here, that the intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County for election services and the resolution authorizing Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections to conduct the City of Alpharetta's November 2nd, 2021 general election, neither of those items will be on the agenda tonight. I've pulled those for future discussion at a meeting in the future. And so those items will not be heard or discussed this evening. Those items being clarified, we'll go on to old business. And the first item under old business is PH-21-03, UDC text amendments. These are the prerequisites for public hearing requests. It is the second reading. Director Cook, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading, and there haven't been any changes since the first reading.
Does any council member have any questions about this item? Mr. Thomas, would you do the honors?
An ordinance to amend Article 4, Section 4.2.1 of the Unified Development Code to add a new paragraph D pertaining to the initiation and review of applications for land use changes to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting ordinances and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council at this time? Since this is the second reading, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approve the amendment to the Unified Development Code for prerequisites for filing public hearing requests as read into the record, the title read into the record by City Attorney Thomas.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by, I'll give it to Councilwoman Richard, by a hair. So the motion was to approve PH-21-03 UDC text amendments prerequisites for public hearing requests as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And that does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the new business. As I noted earlier, items A and B will not be discussed this evening. We'll take up approval of Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant application. Director Robinson.
Good evening. Short and sweet on this one. Basically, we have an opportunity to hopefully obtain a $25,000 grant from Firehouse Subs for fire safety equipment, and there is no match needed for the city, so we're asking for your approval of such grant process and application.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions from council on this item? Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there is anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this matter, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approve the public safety moving forward with the approval of Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant application, which would be for an amount of $25,000.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by Councilman Merkel, and that was to approve the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant application in an amount of $25,000. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Next item up will be the security system replacement camera servers by Director Robinson as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in 2019, Alpharetta received responses to an RFP that was issued with the intent to try to locate one firm for maintenance, management, and support of all our video and badge security systems. As departments would periodically purchase and install various videos and security systems independent from other systems, there was no coordinated or coherent system. So as you can imagine, that would create some issues and be problematic at times. And it really wasn't under one umbrella of responsibility. So decision was made to outsource not only the maintenance, but also the design, the operations, procurement, and installation of hardware and software to ensure that a turnkey solution to our security, again, camera and card readers infrastructure. NetPlanner, which had 30 years plus in the industry, was selected by the team with the RFP process as the best firm to provide these services. After a thorough review of the entire camera system in our city, NetPlanner is proposing the purchase of 2 new servers with redundancy to replace 6 legacy servers with no redundancy capabilities, new software licensing for the 145 cameras and 5 outdated cameras that we currently have. IT has done a review of this proposal from the security consultant, NetPlanner, and believes that the costs included are very competitive in net market rates. And without this review, the city would most likely have continued to replace 6 servers over time, which is just not efficient and does not make sense from a cost standpoint as well. So that is why we're here. This is a budget item, and we're asking for your approval of that item.
Any questions from council? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak about the security system replacement, cameras and servers, now is your opportunity. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approve the purchase of the security system replacement for the camera servers from NetPlanners, including the servers as discussed by Director Robinson, for an amount not to exceed $121,366.05.
So we have a motion and a second, and that was to approve the security system replacement camera servers in an amount not to exceed $121,366.05. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the motion, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Next item up on the new business agenda is the contract approval for artificial turf installation on the town green, RFP 21-108. Director Rogers, you have the floor, and I believe you've got some good news based on the packet that we had earlier received about the pricing.
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. I'm here tonight to talk about or ask for approval of the contract to replace the grass at Town Green with artificial turf. The item was workshopped a couple of times, and was decided that we would move ahead. We estimated the cost to be $115,000, and we put out the RFP, and we missed it. The company that scored the best, they had a $212,000 price tag. So once we found out that they were the company that was the best served with the lowest price, we went into negotiations with them. And over the weekend, with the help of community development and public works, we were able to shave that price tag $52,000. The way we did that is that the RFP called for there to be stamped architectural drawings with that. They were going to have to get a land disturbance permit, and there was enhanced drainage as part of that contract. And working with Kathy's group and Pete's group, we found out that that's not necessarily, because we are simply replacing one impervious surface for another impervious surface. So by reducing those items, we didn't take anything away from the contract. They're still doing exactly the same, well, almost exactly the same thing as they were doing before, and we're getting the same product at the end. So now we're asking for the contract to be approved at a price of $160,000. The staff report that you had showed the account numbers. Everything is the same with the exception of rather than taking $87,918 out of impact fees, we're going to only be taking $33,177 out of impact fees. The project is scheduled for the month of June. We're going to start on June the 1st and be done before July the 4th. But there is an outside chance that if we can get the contract approved and they can get the things ordered, that we can get this done in the month of May before Memorial Day. That's just an outside chance. Make sure everybody understands that. Doing it, we'll definitely do it in June, but there's an outside chance that we can get it done in May. We will. So
you're saying that everybody can count on it being done by Memorial Day, right?
Well, I would say everybody can count on it being done by July the 4th, with the hopes that it'll be done by Memorial Day. But I think at this point in time, I'll just say if anybody got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Do we have any questions from council? Councilman Burnett.
Start to finish, how long is it going to take?
From start to finish, 30 days if we have really bad weather.
Okay.
That's factoring in bad weather. It could be as short as 2 weeks to 15 days.
Understood.
If there was good weather.
Thank you.
But in our world, we have to plan on the worst case scenario. So if you don't see us digging up Town Green by May the 2nd, you know we're moved to June the 1st. But I'll keep you posted.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. The life expectancy of this one, since we went with a better turf, is what?
12 years.
12 years. And can I assume that there will not be tents on it, like special events, like we did on the natural turf?
You can still put tents on there, but you have to use weights instead of staking the tents down.
Okay.
So yeah, you can still have that, but we'll watch very closely. We're going to watch our athletic surface. Our synthetic surface very closely.
Super. Thank you.
And yet, Councilman Binder.
Just not a question, but if you want as a substitute, previous council member Kennedy said that he would be the turf czar or the green czar if you can't get it done by June.
Okay.
So call him up, work it out, and then you can have a green grass for a couple more months longer. So
Tell them to bring a shovel.
bring a shovel, watering hose.
Order those.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Director Rogers. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone here would like to come forward and speak on the replacement of the town green, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to award RFP 21-108 Town Green Artificial Turf Replacement Project to Sprint Turf LLC in the amount not to exceed $160,000 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second. That was a chorus. We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, and I'll say that was Councilwoman Richard that made the second. That was to approve the contract for approval of artificial turf installation on the town green RFP 21-108, an amount not to exceed $160,000 to Sprint Turf LLC, and authorize the mayor to fulfill all documents. Any discussion? All those in favor then please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass 6-1.
Oh, that hurt. Sorry.
That'll wrap up new business for this evening. We'll move on to the workshop. Preliminary list of transportation projects for possible T-Splosh 2. Director Sasevich, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a list that you should have in your packet, and we've got a revised allocation and construction costs that is probably fresh off the press. The revised allocation is based off of new information we received from Fulton County. So you can see that from the initial time we talked, it was a $46,000 for Tier 1. Now we're up to $50,000. And Tier 2, it also went up as well, about $700,000. The additional $4,000 is nice. However, we've had to increase a lot of construction costs based off what we're seeing, and we are seeing a higher cost come in since we last did this. So part of the discussion tonight is if we want to lump projects together, like mid-block crosswalks, and allocate like $1.5 million just for mid-block crosswalks, and then as we progress through T-Splosh 2, if it gets approved, then utilizing the bids that come in, maybe picking them one off by each other, or if they come in over budget, taking dollars from other accounts. But I see a lot of these projects coming in greater than the dollars just based off what we're seeing. For example, Woodbridge Road is going to be in direct competition with Georgia 400 Express Lanes. They're going to be replacing multiple bridges. We're going to be replacing a bridge on Woodbridge Road at the same time. So there is going to be resource allocation challenges as well as material challenges. I know I'm painting a very rosy picture here. However, I'm trying to be as honest as possible and establish expectations where I'd rather encourage mayor and council to, maybe either shortlist projects and then have additional funds in there just in case in different line items that you could go back to projects, rather than having to value engineer projects down because we budget is so tight for a lot of projects. We do have time to go back and revisit the dollars. We have Atkins, who's been helping us out with construction costs, and they've been seeing things progressively go from about last month it was about 15 to 20%. Now they're seeing 20+% coming in. Now, 3 years from now, we might be back to pre-COVID, but this is the best information we have at this given time. I would like to say that the allocation means the project can't be accomplished for that dollar amount. So North Point Parkway cannot be accomplished for $10 million. Cumming Street cannot be accomplished for the $6 million that's listed. It's just, I had a $10 million allocation there for the previous one for North Point, and Cumming Street was the last project on the Tier 1 list, so it just received whatever the difference of $50 million to the projects that were listed above it. So, but we can move these around. You can move a project from Tier 2 to Tier 1 if you wish. Is your discretion.
Councilman Burnett?
Pete, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When T-Splost 1 ends, based on what you have seen and what you know, what will the final dollar threshold of incoming money to the city land at, plus or minus $1 million?
I do not know.
Well, I mean, is it 60 million? Is it 60? I'm asking because
If I could pause, I think I'm seeing hand signals from Director Harris in the back. Director Harris, would you like to help him out? 54 million?
Yes, 54.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's helpful because I don't know that 5 years from now, $54 million is $68 million. I could be wrong, but I certainly, I want to ask you too about, and you'd referenced this about mid-block crosswalks. Would you just lower would you keep these items in there advertised to a voter, or would you just say mid-block crosswalk, we're the government, we're here to help?
So Mayor and Council will vote on a project list.
Yep.
That project list will not be on the ballot. That project list is what we'll use as a communication tool. The ballot will have, do you vote on a 0.75 tax continuation? So how we portray the list is what we'll do. So if you want to do mid-block crosswalks, we can say these are our goals. Let's say mid-block crosswalks, $2 million. Our goal is to do these mid-block crosswalks.
Understood.
If those mid-block crosswalks come in at $2.5 million, then decisions need to be made. If you want to take from another account or another project dollars, or if you want to say we're going to hold off on this one and wait till closer to the end of the T-Splost, 5 years, and if there's additional funds left over, then complete that project.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Merkel?
So if I get you, when we decide on the list, the goal then is to put a bond committee together in the city to promote it, not us, but an independent group, correct? As we've done in the past?
Well, this is for T-Splost.
Oh, yeah.
Bonds, yeah.
All right, so same way though. Even with T-Splost, I still think it's better that they're broken out. I think it shows better than a block of, hey, a bunch of mid-blocks. It just shows that there's thought put in there. Thank you, perfect word. There's thought put into each one of these.
Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pete, when we workshopped this, I think it was in February, there was a question about whether or not the Alpha Loop would meet the state's requirements for the SSTP.
Oh, the STIP.
Yeah.
Yes, our projects, for right here, the projects meet the requirements for the STIP that we have listed in Tier 1.
So Alpha Loop is part of that, so there's no question.
The projects we have listed.
Correct.
Tier 1.
And that's
meet
in
it,
there.
But only 30% meet it. So we don't need
100% of Tier 1.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Binder?
For North Point and Cumming, you said you didn't have those projects obviously would not be that amount.
Correct.
We're still kind of at swag levels of what the amount you think it would be
Yes.
for both of those?
I mean, I could give you a ballpark estimate for North Point Park was between $30 and $40 million.
Okay, and then Cumming?
Cumming Street is probably going to be closer to 12 to 15 million. And that all depends on the right-of-way expenses. I mean, we can narrow some things down. A narrower beauty strip needs less right-of-way, but the right-of-way costs is the unknown right now.
So just, I'm a big fan of kind of if we're going to get, looks like one of them 2/3 of the way into it and 1/4 of the way into it. Would it be would you want our help or advice of when or how we're going to finish it or get to the remaining dollars, or do we need to answer that, or what time? I think these are both great projects. I think they need to be done.
I think North Point Parkway follows a similar approach that we did for Old Milton Parkway with T-Splosh 1. Old Milton Parkway, Mayor and Council allocated $5 million, and that's covering the design and the right-of-way acquisition, and partnering with the Georgia Department of Transportation, we were able to get an additional $25 million for construction. North Point Parkway is a federally funded design, so we're going to follow that process, which will enable us to go after grants and future ARC lettings and project lettings and grants to use that $10 million as leverage for another $10, $20 million.
Okay.
So I would be hesitant to put in more than North Point just because you're still looking at 3 to 4 years before you put a shovel on the ground on North Point Parkway.
Yep.
So we're using this leverage to help get the kitty up.
And I know with Old Milton, it's hard to say the runway timeline because we're just kind of hurry up and wait on a lot of it.
Yes.
Because of things, but would love to see, based on what we've learned from Old Milton, if we can see a view of the runway. So just these are the steps that are going to take and how long it could or could not. So not kind of holding you to the length of the runway because you can't control that, and we all know that, and you do a good job. But just knowing what are our decision steps and our milestones to get there. Just since we're putting a big chunk of the T-Splosh list, but not necessarily, only 0.25% of the entire project. So that's just my advice on there. But I think it's good to have them in there. But we just need to set expectations within council and probably our residents if they vote for this. Of this doesn't mean a finished project, and this is how long it'll take.
Councilmember Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the I don't care if it is at the bottom of Tier 3. I think advertising the tunnel on North Point Parkway makes a ton of sense, knowing that there is. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. In the event that I needed that project as part of something that had additional mountains of money behind it from other sources and agencies, I would like to see it on there, even if we, as a body of 7, say today, hey, it's not the most important thing on our list, but if somebody was going to spend $2 trillion on infrastructure, I sure would like to say we've had every intention of sitting here funding this project, because you can't ask for it if you can't ask for it down the road if you haven't shown the willingness to put a local dollar towards it initially.
Just to clarify, which project was this? The tunnel under?
Under Haynes Bridge.
Haynes Bridge, okay.
Sorry about that.
Part of the
No, that's fine. I just thought there was a new tunnel.
We're just going to tunnel everywhere.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? So Pete, if we look at this list, do you think this is the best, most realistic allocation that we can put together of these priorities? And I ask you that because the trade-off is that we're going into this knowing we don't have enough funding for some of these projects. And is it better, in your opinion, to go within like this, or to have Tier 1 actually reflect what we think the actual cost will be?
I would revise Tier 1 dollars, working with Atkins, one last time before it comes up for a vote to Mayor and Council. I don't think we need another workshop, but I do believe one more stab to see what's going on. For example, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to get proposals in, bids in, for the first section of Webbridge Road, which takes us from the Greenway right to the end of the West Wind sidewalk. And we're going to be able to compare those dollars with that small little section. It does have a raised boardwalk, but we're going to start seeing what is that unit price looking, sort of like what we did with the Greenway and some of our sidewalk projects. What are we seeing things come in as? Even traffic control, which is a lump sum item, but a percentage of the overall cost. We'll start being able to get a good gauge is, are things creeping up more than we think they are right now? In all honesty, we're dealing with it's a resource shortage, both labor and materials right now. So we're hoping to get ahead of the game on a lot of different things. But we are noticing that even when we ask our milling resurfacing vendor, you know, they mentioned that asphalt's gone up. We know that concrete's gone up. So I'd like one more stab at before mayor and council has to have a final vote, which I believe all you're going to see is some of the prices creep up a little bit. And the Cumming Street would probably be one of them that we could play with, because it's an important project, and design and right-of-way acquisition would keep that project moving forward as we start funneling, trying to see what construction costs are coming in as. Because I know I can't do the project for that $6 million. So funding design and right-of-way would be a good chunk of that, and some additional sources used for things that go up. Because I do believe Alpha Loop is going to creep up a little higher too, based off what we're seeing with precast concrete.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Binder?
Can I just ask a follow-up, just to clarify? So as you see this today with the prices you know today, you're good with this list as is, but you just want time to see what construction costs are increasing to?
Yeah, before you guys make your final vote, which will be sometime in, I would imagine, mid-May.
And you answered this with North Point, saying that it's a federal process and GDOT in there, but Cumming, how do we make up the difference?
Cumming is we're looking at designing that work in-house.
Okay.
So we're having the engineers and landscape architects working collaboratively, following the east of Main typical section along Cumming Street, and then minimizing the hiring structural engineers to do any retaining walls. So we're taking away that several $100,000 of dollars required to hire consultants to control that, as well as then we're going to start figuring out how we can deal with the bridge, because that's the culvert at Cumming Street at Jane Allen at Claremont Drive is the challenge.
Okay, but if the project you're looking anywhere could be 10 to 14 million, do we make up that difference a little bit at a time on an annual basis, or are you going to need a big chunk?
Through capital investments as well. I mean, capital budgets, you could easily go from intersection to intersection through funding throughout the years. We're still 3 years before we'd put a shovel in the ground on Cumming Street if we kept moving forward with it. That's a long corridor that needs easements from almost every single property owner.
Our wheels move slow on funding sometimes, especially in this environment. So I'm just making sure we're realistic and saying, okay, when do we need to get that? This is a deposit for it, but when do we have to do the final payment for Cumming? So,
and we could work on that.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? Councilman Hypes.
In the event money has to be reduced or eliminated, is this is put in order of priority, so to speak, so that the one on the chopping block based on this list is Cumming Street?
Correct. Yeah, the way this list was developed was that ranking system, and then went down, that you guys ranked projects 1, 2, and 3. This is how they came down.
Okay. And you're not talking about scaling down 5% across the board and none of the projects being completed. You're talking about basically 1 or 2 items would be reduced such that it probably would not get completed.
Yeah, I would not downgrade the investment or value engineer out critical components of a project. I would keep things going through, and I mean, what we'll do is we'll know early on in this process if T-Splosh 2 passes, if the mid-block crosswalks, for example, come in collectively, we would bid all those out at the exact same time to get some economies of scale. If it came in at 1.5 million and the bid comes, you plan for 1.5 million, the bids come in at 2.25 million, we'll have some decisions to make collectively and figure out what do we do from that point. I talked to Councilwoman Richard this afternoon, and what helped us a lot this go around T-Splosh 1 was Windward. Windward got downsized dramatically, and that is what enabled us to do Webb Bridge and a few other projects, and help pay for the change order sort of with Morris Road with a roundabout instead of a signal. So we're a little different here.
Right, and just to clarify for Councilman Heights as well, just because these projects were listed from the rankings, once T-Splosh passed, we're not committed to council always keeping those priorities within the tiers. So, for example, just because as we sit here, that Cumming Street may have ranked lower than some of the other projects, council in each one of these projects will be reviewing the project as it comes forward and deciding whether to expend those funds at that time. So I just don't want you to feel like because it's in this order, we're forced to move forward and do it that way, because we'll have numerous opportunities to look at them and make some of those decisions.
And that helps clarify a little bit of my thinking, and the other part of my thinking was, as Director Pete was going to go back and evaluate the cost projections, what was he going to come back to us with? But I think you both answered my question. So.
Good. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Yes, I just want to emphasize, we all voted on Cumming Street. I think it's an extremely important project, not because I live off Cumming Street, but I do see how many people walk on Cumming Street. I think it's one of the least affected or least touched areas in our city. I know we're not creating another Rucker Road, but it is something that has an extremely large amount of pedestrian traffic from all the way down to Westside Parkway.
9 to Westside. Yep.
To Cumming. So to 9th Street, or I'm sorry, Highway 9. So I think it's extremely important, and I understand the phasing process, but I agree with the mayor. This should not be the last year once it's voted on. And as far as the grouping together with the roundabouts and the crosswalks, I have no problem with grouping those together because we don't know what inflation will be. As long as we communicate fully what those projects within that group are, because I want to be crystal clear with the public and what their voting options are. But I think the public has voted on enough T-SPLOST and bonds throughout the years. They understand that inflation dictates once we get the dollars. So, all right, thank you.
One of the very smart things on T-SPLOST 1 that Mayor Council did was they put sidewalks and greenway as a line item. And that enabled us to move forward with the Encore Greenway project there. So it's just things to think about, that we can add another line item here and there to help maneuver over the next 4 or 5 years, so you're not stuck in that proverbial box.
And thank you, Pete, for not making this too rosy for us. So,
thank you.
All right.
It's a lot easier to spend extra money than it is to come up with extra money. Any other comments? Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate all the work you've been putting into that. This is a workshop, so we won't be voting on this item. It's just for discussion, input from council before we bring forth a business item at a later time. Next workshop item is the preliminary list of parks projects for possible bond issue. Director Rogers, you have the floor once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet was a list of the bond items that had been considered at the last workshop. And then subsequent to that, sending that out, I sent out an email to Mayor and Council explaining a little bit better, and not better, in greater detail, and sometimes better, detail of each of the projects and kind of what we were looking at. And I don't know if you want me, Mr. Mayor, to run through each of the projects or just see if there's any questions
Why don't you go ahead and just run through them right quick
okay.
for the public as much as anybody else.
So the first on the list is the first one is the Wills Park Equestrian renovation build out at $5 million. That is $5 million that will have to be matched by the Wills Park Equestrian Foundation dollar for dollar for it to be spent. So that would be a $10 million investment in the equestrian center to bring it up to what we're calling the Alpharetta standard. The second thing on my list is the Wills Park Master Plan project at $4 million, and that is to continue the development of the Wills Park Master Plan that was approved by this group about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it includes the gateway entrances to the park, redoing Waggy World, redoing Wacky World, that's the dog park and the playground, and increasing and improving parking at Wills Park and renovating the area below the parking lot for the pool and improving the disc golf course. The third on the list is the Mid-Broadwell Park build-out. That's one of the community parks on Mid-Broadwell. at $500,000. That's to finish that park. We've put in a restroom. We're currently waiting for the sewer line to be installed, but there'll be a restroom there, and then this money would be to complete the rest of the infrastructure at that park, to include a playground, trails, parking, and amenities like pavilions and benches and those kind of things. The fourth item is a community park design and build out at $2 million each for the Milton Avenue Park, Union Hill Park, Old Rucker Park, and Waters Road Park. And that is to we're going to have that'll pay for to go through the design portion as well as the construction portion of each of those 4 areas. Then we have on the list the Farmhouse Park design and build out at $3 million, and that is again to design the park. They're right at 400 in Old Milton, design and develop the heritage type park at Alpharetta's first settlement. Then the next thing on the list is the turf web bridge large soccer field at $1 million. This is the upper field at the Webb Bridge. It is it's the largest practice area that we have for our soccer program. Last year, we lost 60% of the games and practices because of rainouts and rain. And then on that field, and then right below it where we had the turf field, we only lost 10% of the practices because of the rain and thunderstorms. And then the last thing on the list is park acquisition at $6 million.
Thank you, sir.
And just for the record, that park land acquisition includes buying land for the Alpha Loop and parkland around the city. So it right now is just all in one pot.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hypes.
Director Rogers, on number 7 in parkland acquisition, you've got years of experience, overseeing parks. Based on what land is selling for, and we can do a bond every so often, but we get our one chance to do a bond and obtain money for certain items. How do you feel about $6 million when an opportunity comes along? What is that, about 6 acres or 8 acres of land for that period of time? And I'm thinking out loud. I'm not even looking for a particular. I want to know what you think, but I mean, I'm not quite sure where you would separately fund an opportunity if it were to come along, but for planning for that opportunity. So, what do you think about $6 million measured against when an opportunity presents itself?
Well, I think if you have $6 million, then that probably takes care of most of the opportunities that will present itself the first time, but then the second opportunity, you're probably going to miss out because it's in this day and time, there's $6 million when you start buying land in Alpharetta. It's just not a lot of money. And keep in mind that we're talking about land along the Alpha Loop as well as just general parkland. So I don't, it sounds like a lot of money, but then when you start buying property in Alpharetta, it's not.
To me, it doesn't sound like a lot of money. And while I'm all in 110% on the Alpha Loop, there's money for the Alpha Loop from other sources. But if you have non-Alpha Loop land acquisition for a park when an opportunity presents itself, I'm just posing the question. That might be 6 or 7 acres total, and will that suffice for the time frame that we might envision utilizing these bond funds?
Yeah, I think if you're just talking about parkland and not land along the Alpha Loop, I think $6 million would go a little bit further than that, because one of the things that is the express intent of the city is to have a park within a 10-minute walk of every resident. So when you go outside of downtown and out of the congested areas a little bit, the land is a little bit cheaper. So I think if it was just for parkland, I think $6 million would be good for the next 2 or 3 years for those opportunities that would come along. And again, and I appreciate your comment about my experience, but my experience is in recreation and parks and not in real estate. So with all that said, I just wanted to point that out.
You've done a good job building park systems. So.
Thank you.
Councilman Merkel.
Morgan, we talked a little bit in your email. I know this is a touchy subject. The farmhouse park design and build is a stretch for me personally. Having gone over and walked that property, having talked to Pete about Georgia 400 extension could actually go into that area. And if we were to build something in there and they'd have to come back, maybe we can get them to pay to move or change it. But I just struggle with how many people in the city would actually utilize it. Where are the dollars best spent is something we talk about all the time. Where does it make sense for the majority of the city? And I've supported a lot of historical things in this city since I've been on council. I'm proud of it, whether it's the log cabin that went quite a bit over budget, but we got a history center. I don't think we're short on history. I think we can find a way to designate that area. But again, it's something to walk down to and look at a plaque, and you're going to be right on Georgia 400's shoulder. So the noise is going to be down there. I appreciate the history, like I said. I think we can find a way to put a monument of some sort, maybe a trail down there to see it. But $3 million borrowed to put a park in that really wouldn't service much of the city is something I'm just not really that keen on. So other than that, I think you've done a great job with this. Thank you. Not that you didn't do a good job with that. I mean, overall, you did a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. Morgan, did we talk about Brookside Park? It wasn't mentioned in your email, and I see it on the list, but I don't see it referenced in the email. So that's still on the list, right?
That is still on the list, and you're right. I think in my head when I combined those four, because the Milton Avenue, Old Ruck, or Union Hill, and Waters were all listed separately, and I combined it into one. And I think in my head, I threw Brookside in there. I did not, so it should have been on the list.
And we're looking at $2 million for.
$2 million for Brookside.
And can you talk about what phase? It says phase 1. So can you talk a little bit about what that includes?
Well, the Brookside Park is, it's on Old Milton, just on the other side of the creek. It's a beautiful piece of property, gorgeous park that butts up to Big Creek, and on the other side of the creek, we have more property, more park property on the other side of the creek. So phase 1 would get us access to Brookside Park, because currently, at best, the access is hidden and is not very public friendly. So we would get access to it, improve the trails, and build a bridge over Big Creek so that we have direct access from the Brookside development to the Big Creek Greenway, which would then give those folks access to the things that are on Old Milton, right there at North Point. Is that North Point Parkway? Yes, North Point Parkway. So it would be to develop the trail system, the entrances, the trail system, and the bridge over the creek. Now, the exact location of the bridge hasn't been determined yet. We're still trying to figure that out, but we know we want to cross the creek with a bridge there so that we can give the folks that are on the east side of the creek access to the Greenway.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Right. And I apologize for leaving that off. I appreciate you.
No, I just want to make sure that, because I think Brookside is an important opportunity there, so I want to make sure we hadn't lost track. And to follow up on Councilmember Merkel's comments about the farmhouse design, we have somebody has done an initial.
And I brought a copy.
Concept. Okay. Conceptual, okay.
Doesn't say that this could be built because there's been no topography studies or studies about what can be built, whether it's a historical site, how historical is there, any archivic stuff down there. So this is just a rendering. That was the word I was looking for. I was
Okay.
talking until I found the word. The word was rendering. So this is just a rendering of what could be.
So with the expansion of 400, we're also Webbridge Bridge is being expanded, correct? That's part of the GDOT plan?
Right.
We're widening Webbridge.
Correct.
And then, am I also understanding, I've heard that there's GDOT discussions about Old Milton Bridge being addressed?
That's still pie in the sky stuff.
High in the sky, okay. So for access points, can you point out to us where the likely access points would be for the park?
The likely access to the parks are either, well, it's going to probably be off of Webbridge Road, which is going to be, there's a more direct route, but the topography it's going to be tough to get down there. So I think the most reasonable access is going to be Webbridge and literally follow the little creek there till you get to the site with nice trails and some switchbacks so they can be ADA accessible. That's just my that would be my thought. There's already development on the east side of all of that, so that's going to, we don't own any of that property, so I think it's going to have to come from Webbridge.
Come from the west side? Okay. It's hard to imagine with the expansion, I did the same thing as Councilmember Merkel, walked the property with you a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago, and at that point, I mean, the road noise, the traffic down on the creek was pretty sizable. I mean, it was definitely, it impacted your experience there, and it's hard for me to see how the widening is only going to impact that even more, because we're going to lose a lot of that buffer that we currently have there. Is that fair?
That's more of
Maybe
a
that's
Pete
more of a Pete
question.
question.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
hoping
I can see it in
Sorry.
his eyes.
That would be more of a, I think, so I think the answer is yes, that, if you get closer, the noise is going to be louder, but I think there's also been talk about sound barriers and those kind of things along 400 as well. So I don't know, I just don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I apologize. But.
And so the $3 million is design and a total rough guess at build-out? Is that?
Yes, it is. It's just a wag at what it would cost.
Well, just to follow up on that, this looks like a pretty long trail. Pete, how much are we spending on the Alpha Loop Trail?
Budgeting right now right at around $1,200 a linear foot for trails.
Have you reviewed this site at all as far as?
I have not, no.
Okay.
And when I say that 1,200, it was like $900 a linear foot for the Greenway extension, and then you extrapolate some costs for some recent projects as well into that $1,200 number.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman Richard?
No, thank you.
Councilman Hypes?
Well, costs are important. I'm still on the farmhouse discussion. And, I think it's important that we preserve our history, but when we, pave a path to our history, that's a different discussion. I first heard about the farmhouse settlement from Arthur Letches, and I used to think downtown was the original settlement, and I remember him telling me about that many years ago. And we control the property, we own the property, but all this discussion about $3 million in this flyover bridge, we are basically funneling people. If we're successful, we're funneling people to a historic site with no oversight of what happens to it. And if we're not successful, we spend $3 million with the road and the bridge to nowhere. Where the way it is now, it is a historic site in a rustic setting, and you can manage to see very many beautiful things on the Appalachian Trail if you choose. We just haven't paved it over to enable people to get there. So I would just like to see it preserved and accessible in some sort of more rustic way, but the cost does seem to be somewhat disproportionate to some of these other items that we have started but not yet finished, and other opportunities. So whether $3 million in your mind, Director, can be revised downward to preserve it and still make it Appalachian Trail accessible without bridges and pavement, I would be curious to know that. But we could just build a highway right up to it, and you could, parallel park your car and say, there's the rock, there's the mill, there's the site. That might cost $10 million, but I don't know that we actually do ourselves any service by preservation of something that's near and dear to the city's history.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love my friend, the pro tem, Donald Mitchell, and I do not understand why he advocates for everything that he advocates for. I didn't understand the Arts Center. I didn't understand the History Museum, and I was glad I didn't understand, because they're phenomenal assets, to the tune that we thought about making one of them a wedding venue. And if $3 million is too expensive, then I'm willing to have that conversation. But I'm grateful for the idea and the concept, and there are so many cities around here that don't have the opportunity to preserve history because they paved over it or they built over it, and you don't have to always see it to understand. That's my favorite part of this job, is that there are all kinds of things. I know nothing about art. I'm grateful that there are people that do, because they make things a lot better. And if it's not $3 million, then that's fine, but I can promise you guys it's going to be a part of the damn conversation. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, then Councilman Binder.
I won't belabor the point, but I can assure you there are hundreds of people in our community who value the fact that we should restore Firehouse as a park. We can access it from Webb Bridge, and I agree with Councilmember Hypes. I don't want to build some flyover bridge that looks like some modern, thing going to Disneyland or Epcot. It can be a natural access point from the Greenway. It can be a natural trail like on the Appalachian or somewhere else. And it needs to be natural. It needs to be something. But to preserve our original settlement as a city is something that we should wise up to and do. I wish the council, when Arthur Letchis was serving, I wish they had done that and begun that process, but that didn't happen. It didn't happen with Sandy Springs when they plowed over the original springs to build some new mammoth modern edifice to nowhere, to nothing, that will be out of style within 20 years. We have a chance in this city, like none other city in the state of Georgia, to restore and preserve our history. We have a movie about Firehouse. If people in the community are interested, you can watch the movie and understand the importance on it. We've also done radar scanning of the park, and they identified original foundation settlement areas within that scanning. And this plan was done, unlike Brookside Park, this plan was done earlier on. It's been talked about for years. We just need to saddle up and do it. Thank you.
Councilman Binder.
What I will say is to try to bring some good news here is it seems like 90% of it, everyone's kind of in agreement or understand it's a diversified portfolio of trying to bring recreational to our entire city. I think there's a lot of things that we do need in there, like that bring equity to recreation for all of Alpharetta residents and on those neighborhood parks on that thing. The Equestrian Center, it's excited to see that vision becoming a reality. Same thing with some of our older parks. What on this farmhouse community, I'll echo a lot of what Councilmember Burnett said. Is I don't know a lot on some of it, and I just can't figure it out. And I think the same thing with Brookside Park. I don't understand it, but there's enough people that I know and trust that say it's going to be a good thing. And then so this farmhouse is similar. What I would love for this council to do is let's see how ways that we can make it work or visit before we just throw it out of hand. And one thing that I thought was interesting when Mayor of Belle Isle was looked at this, I think when Pro Tem Mitchell was talking to him about it, was Mayor Belle Isle brought up was why can we not connect to Avalon? I don't even know if this was before the loop was there, but would love to see if we could make this work. How can there be a connector between our Greenway and Avalon to the Alpha Loop or somewhere in the Alpha Loop there? Because I do think bridging that divide between east and west on Encore Park and a little bit further north on Webb Bridge would be good. So I definitely understand there's a lot of unknowns here, but would love to see how we can make it work within our plans for recreation today. So, and I think there is something to say that this may be our connection point for the Greenway and the Alpha Loop. But I think it's good that we're 90% there, it seems like. So something to be celebrated.
So Morgan, I guess I'm the only one that hasn't spoken yet. I'm glad you brought this because it reminds me of this. I have to say, when I look at this, and nobody at this dais or in the community has said we shouldn't preserve this site. It's preserved. So let's be clear about that. This is not whether we're threatening to pave over the farmhouse. This is whether this council decides with all of the other priorities within Parks and Recreation and within things that we wanted to include on this bond issue, we spend $3 million to accomplish this plan. And looking at this plan and thinking about the priorities that we've already discussed as far as how much it costs to acquire more park space, the Alpha Loop, which we say is one of our top priorities, and for the redevelopment of parks and amenities within some of our more challenged office building developments. And so when I look at this, I see we're really just connecting a parking lot by Webbridge Road going around, and I'm not sure that we own all the right-of-way between Webbridge Road and this site. Yeah, Pete's shaking his head that no, we do not own that property, okay? So we don't own all this property from where it would connect near Webbridge Road until we get down to the farmhouse, because we did get an easement, if I recall, for that location down there when we did a rezoning for that parcel. So if we haven't even included acquiring the property rights for that, $3 million won't accomplish very much of anything. And I say all that to say I am very sympathetic to the cause of preserving this site. And if we were just talking about spending some money to get people from the parking lot there by QT, because I believe we do have a parking easement or some zoning condition that allows us to have parking in that area, and getting people down to the site, I'm amenable to doing that. But when I look at whether the value of $3 million to build this trail from where it's proposed on this, as opposed to adding another mile on the Alpha Loop or adding another 2 parks scattered amongst some of our other areas, I have a hard time justifying that. So just wanted to share that with you and the rest of council as far as priorities. It's not that anyone, I think, doesn't see this as being a good idea. There's just a number of things I think right now. Quite frankly, I think if we could spend $1 million to get access to it for now and spend that other $2 million on the Alpha Loop or on Brookside Park, which is 20-something acres right by a challenged office park development that could use those amenities to help bring people back into the buildings and things like that. I just think there's other things that would be better spent for that money. but we'll continue to have these discussions and figure that out. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, or Tom, what, in the future budgets, what do you have? It says $29.5 million. What is the run rate or the annual cost of servicing that debt under your projections? Fair enough. $1,650,000. Thank you. 25 years? Yes. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Director Rogers. We'll continue to have the conversations and see if we can't get to a finalized list for you soon. So that'll wrap up the workshop on that item, and we'll move into public comment. So if there's anyone here who would like to make a public comment, now's your chance to do so. Ms. Cobb, do we have any comment cards?
We do not, sir.
Seeing no one else coming forward and having no cards, I'll go ahead and close public comment. Reports. Do we have any reports? Seeing no reports, we'll close reports. And now, sadly, I must inform you that we must ask to adjourn into executive session. If we have a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Motion to adjourn into executive session.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilwoman Richard. All those in favor of adjourning into executive session, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing y'all at the next meeting.